already work now. Well, this moment at deadline.com. Oops, I need that. Okay, oh, good afternoon. So this what?
No, that's Brian. No, the other. This is different Brian.
All right, so this question is kind of the state of indie film question. It's my understanding that a lot of your high-profile films that came your way in the programming process of this year came via producers as opposed to maybe in years past where you had a lot of distributors who kind of presented them to you. And I know that the premiere section this year, like all the titles are for sale, at least as of last I heard. And I'm just wondering if that is, if you see that as indicative of the state of indie film at this point. I mean, is this maybe a good manifestation of the creative process that's happening right now, or just what are your thoughts on this? Could go to you.
Well, I can, John can step into this one. I can speak a little bit about that, since it has a relationship with how things were when we started. As John says, it's healthy now, independent film. I think that's true. That doesn't mean that it's easy. It's never been easy, but things have changed enough to where I can honestly look on this whole thing with a certain gratification I didn't have years ago when we started this back when the festival started in '86. Independent film was a very, very small category, and it was simply off the radar in terms of what the mainstream was doing. And also, the mainstream meaning major studios were still in existence then. So there's been a lot of changes over the years. What I'm seeing this year that's so gratifying is that a category that was so small when we started, and even smaller when we started the labs, has grown consistently, so that now, with the collapsing of the mainstream, with the business changing so radically, what I'm seeing is that the independent film, the categories and the community is growing. So you have people that used to work more exclusively in the mainstream with their work are now coming into independent work. So for example, in this festival, we have Spike Lee, you have Stephen Frears, you have actors here that have come in more into independent film. So they're here. And the reason is that I think that community is growing because it's offering more possibilities and more freedom and control of the artists themselves, which is what we're really all about in terms of independence. So that's a change that I see happening. The independent film community is growing with the new advantages that Carrie just mentioned with distribution and things that didn't exist before. That's due to the internet. So there's some really wonderful things happening that are very gratifying to me. John, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to exactly is how film's coming through the door. I mean, around about June and July, I'll talk to anybody with the film at that point. So it's true, there was a much more direct relationship to the producers. They're carrying that. They're carrying both the early stages of what to do with the film. Basically what's happening to producers is they're in charge of everything that happens to the film as well after it's made, which includes festivals, which includes distribution, whether they go this way or that way. So our producers have to be much more savvy than I realized 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think there's a sort of an independent entrepreneurial spirit we're seeing in the producers of, particularly, you know, all the films, but you mentioned the premiere section, Brian. I mean, I think there's more access to equity finance. There's more creative ways to put the projects together that allow filmmakers to retain independence and autonomy through that process. It may, you know, they may still decide to sell it, you know, in an acquisition, but it affords them some flexibility that I think has begun to fill a space that the studios, like Bob said, have maybe left behind.